Welcome to NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series, where we focus on how financial advisors work, live, and give to their local communities and our greater financial services industry. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Gandy, one of your co-hosts for Advisor Today podcast for NAIFA. And we're here today where we have one of the past presidents and currently sitting past president, Mr. Tom Michel. He's going to join us today. And again, just to remind you, Advisor Today's podcast is designed to help advisors come together, uplift each other, learn from each other, and we come together to advocate for the future of our continuity of our business. With that being said, we can't help but we got to make sure we announce the other co-host, Miss Suzanne Carawan. The wonderful Miss Suzanne Carawan, would you take it away to talk about our sponsor for today?
Yep, sure will. Thank you, Chris. And welcome, Tom. So Advisor Today was made possible by the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, the only association that will help to advocate, educate, and differentiate you if you're a member. So if you have not a member, you might want to consider joining. We'd absolutely consider joining. And if I can't convince you at the beginning, hopefully by the end of this, Tom Michel will have, without a shadow of a doubt, convince you why you need to go to naifa.org/join. We are the only association in the industry that advocates at the interstate, state, and federal levels. And hopefully we'll touch on that today. And again, this wouldn't be possible without all of the people, the 20,000 plus members that every day are out there serving Main Street America. With that, Tom, we're excited to delve into kind of your past and explore and understand why you love this organization so much.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Suzanne. It's a real pleasure to be with both of you.
All right, Mr. Tom. So those who don't know you, we followed your leadership and over the last couple years. And Tom, can you give people a little insight on kind of how you got started in the industry and kind of the path you took, because we know your path was a little bit different along the way?
I'd love to. It's actually kind of a funny story if I have to say so myself. It wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. I've been in the industry almost 37 years now. When I first got out of school, first I was a bartender because I couldn't find out what I would like to do, but I did learn some sales skill sets behind the bar. And what I really learned sitting behind the bar was how to listen. And I think there's not a good advisor out there that if you don't learn how to listen first, you've got problems. You got to be able to listen first, talk second. I think Chris and his team would tell you that too. But to try to speed this up, I finally went to work in the automotive business for a couple of years. And I was doing very, very well for a national company, not selling cars, but it was an automotive sales part manufacturer. And I helped get the company into a national chain. And at the end of the year, I was going, this is going to be a huge bonus because our sales had doubled and all that. And when the time came to get my bonus, the bonus was the same as the year before. In other words, it wasn't much. And I walked out the door and I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And before I could walk out the door, the owner of the company turned around. He wanted to show me the blueprints of his new yacht. So in this case, the only guy that won was the owner of the company. And I went home and talked to my dad. And he goes, remember what I told you, try to be in business for yourself if you can. And so I didn't know what it was going to be, but I did meet some people and eventually found that I thought the insurance business would be a great calling for me because it's a people business and I like to help people. And sure enough, about 2 months later, I signed up as an agent with the old Connecticut Mutual Life Insurance Company that's no longer around. And as the day I signed up to be an agent, I signed up to be a member of what they called then the NAILU, National Association of Life Underwriters, now known as NAIFA. And I've always told the story that the first signature to be an agent was important, but the most important signature was the second one, becoming a member of NAIFA. Yeah, why don't I stop there and see if you got some questions after that.
So Tom, if you could take us back just some, when you thought of the concept of coming from working for someone else to potentially working for yourself, what was your biggest fear about coming into the insurance or financial service, the insurance business? What was your biggest fear, and what did you have to overcome? Because obviously you didn't automatically just jump in and become successful at insurance. I mean, what were some of the obstacles you had to overcome and challenges you had to overcome?
That's such a good question. And I think a lot of people have had to look in the mirror, but my answer is really quite simple. And it's probably the answer of many. That was the fear of failure. I was scared to death that I couldn't pull it off. And, I heard the stories about how many people succeed in this business. My dad surely told me how many people succeed in this business. So that scared me, but it also drove me. I think the fear of failure can be a powerful tool. And I wasn't going to let myself down. I wasn't going to let my parents down. I wasn't going to let my friends down. That drove me. But I had the fear of prospecting too. Another common pitfall of those, I was afraid to ask for a meeting because sometimes back then I was primarily a life insurance agent, and we know sometimes the rap they get. And so I was afraid that I would be put off. And so sometimes I didn't call the people I needed to call. Eventually I got over that, because that's the other hurdle that I think you can all relate to is, and you have to be able to stomach this, is you have to be able to handle people telling you, no, not today, no, not thank you, or even stronger words than that. And once you get over that, it's okay. But I'd like to tell you I got right over that after, right away. And I didn't. I mean, I was doing okay, but I was barely making my contracts for about a year and a half. And then I saw a NAIFA meeting that was sponsoring a topic on, buy, sell, and succession planning for a business. And I knew I had a couple clients that fit, a father and a son, that I knew pretty well, that I thought this might be of interest. So I said, well, let me go learn something about it. Quick story again, the topic was so entertaining. I took as many notes as I could. I got together with the person that presented it. I then went out and made the presentation to the first candidate that I thought, and I closed the largest sale of my young career, made company clubs and MDRT and all that just on this one sale. And in essence, I was off to the races. And maybe that's one reason why I've always been so fond of NAIFA, because I don't know where I would have gone if I didn't go get that, as I call it, that rubber chicken lunch. But it sure was it sure turned my career around, because it also gave me a great amount of confidence to sell a complicated sale. And I helped people out. And ironically enough, 3 years later, this father passed away. What we put in place went into effect and saved them thousands of dollars in a number of different ways. And to this day, I'm still good friends with the son. And matter of fact, I think I'm having lunch with him next week, and that could be a whole nother topic. Don't lose touch with your clients. So long story, but I think it's a great story about persistency and stick to it. And yes, failure is common, so don't be afraid of it. Embrace the failure, and it'll motivate you. And I think you'll find that good days are ahead, if not great days.
So Tom, you mentioned, I just want to kind of come back for all the listeners out there, is that, you talked about a couple major things there. You talked about, and indirectly, you talked about believing in yourself. You talked about that. You talked about as NAIFA as being a place where you went and you learned something. The opportunity of learning is always on the forefront of helping advisors. Plus, you went to a place where you were able to for all practical purposes, utilize the expertise of others who had other experience versus you. You were able to borrow essentially those nuggets to be able to take and reutilize with your clients, and that became your largest sale. But you also talked about the human part of our business, which is fear of failure, right? And the importance of that and embracing that, not being afraid of it, right? You're tackling it head on and understanding what that is, and then sticking with it. So that it's really, really good. But your path is still. Can you dig into? We all think that we're just going to be advisors forever, and the insurance industry is so broad. And you could be an underwriter, you could be a consultant, you could be a wholesaler, you could be an insurance advisor, you could be a financial advisor, you could be all these different things. Can you kind of give us kind of your path, because I think it's pretty interesting of kind of all the things and ways you've seen the business a little bit.
Yeah, again, it's well, my wife will tell you I'm a little strange, but yeah, my path is a little unique, because my path was a little strange. And before I get there, I think I can tie into the last topic and what you were saying there, Chris, and we may talk about mentors later on, but one of my great mentors and friends was Norm Levine, who's a legend in the business. And he had a great acronym called BEAK, and it was B for belief, E for enthusiasm, A for activity, and K for knowledge. And if you think about it, what you just summarized my story, it does that. I had to believe in myself. I still had to be enthusiastic about what I was doing. I still had to have the activity, even though it wasn't seeming to produce the results I wanted. But at the end of the day, I still needed the knowledge, the K. And once I got that K, I was able to move on. And that I still have BEAK in my office. It's right above me here. So here I am, supposedly near the end of my career, and I don't think I am. And I still follow this BEAK. You got to believe in yourself. You got to be enthusiastic. As far as my path, which I used BEAK a lot, it's because I maybe I should have stayed where I was, but I always seemed to follow stuff that interested me. So after I was in the business for a few years, I had people ask me about 401k plans. Now, this is going to age me, but this is when 401k plans were new. People forget they came around in around 1980, and I was fairly new in the business in that time. And so I wanted to learn more about 401k plans and carriers that had them, and products that were available to advisors like myself. So I learned about 401k plans because I thought there was a void. I didn't think a lot of people were attacking that market. And so that's another thing. You always, target market. If you think there's opportunities, go learn about it. Whether it was succession planning, or in this case, 401k plans. So I went into I started learning about the 401k business, and I started to do really well. And I really liked the income, because it was recurring income, which for those of you that are on commission understand, sometimes the problem with the commission business is you can go a couple times with those zero paychecks, and those zero paychecks can be awfully depressing. But the 401k provided recurring income, because as soon as someone made money, you made money. Anyways, that business evolved, and it actually took me away from the carrier they signed up with, because they really didn't have a 401k product. And I was selling more 401ks than anything. But the 401ks, for those of you out there trying to find your niche, the beauty of that business is it allows you a relationship with business owners, and the ancillary sales that come out of that business it's unbelievable. I mean, it could be key person insurance. You could sell group life insurance, group disability. 401ks are really a great way to get in the door, especially in the smaller companies. The larger companies, FYI, you got a lot of people going after the same pie. But if you can go after those less than $1 million, it's a great, great market. Anyways, I was doing so well, to be perfectly frank, that after a while I was approached by an insurance company to become a regional wholesaler. Now, I had not been on a salary plus bonus program in quite some time, but I was really intrigued by the opportunity to do that. So again, real fast, I went into wholesaling for a few years with a local company, and did very well and led the company and all that good stuff, and very proud of how I adapted. And then was very successful there. That the same company then asked me to go into management for one of their agencies. And we did that as well, and went into management and really helped that agency grow back to its. It had been a good agency, it had kind of fallen off, and we brought it back to new heights. And it was very, very fun. And I learned from two of the best in the industry that I can maybe touch on later that taught me a lot. And so here I am. And if I have to be so blunt, I was excelling, but I was still learning. And that would be another tip to everybody out there. The day you stop learning is the day someone's going to run right by you. So you got to keep learning. Anyways, I did that for a while. And then after running an office and having personnel issues for a few years, I decided to go back into personal production, and it's kind of gone full circle. So I've seen a lot of the different sides of the industry, all of which I embrace, and they've all been good to me. But now I think it makes me a more full service advisor, for lack of a better term, because I know a lot. I know a lot about a little, or a little about a lot. Either way you want to look at it.
So Tom, you touched on mentors. I can tell you that, I'm not sitting here without some of those mentors that have touched my life and my career, because it takes somebody to reach back to help somebody else, to help them see through their rose-colored glasses the opportunity, and then also for their belief in you to excel, right? And so, can you touch on just some of the mentors and kind of some of the things you, or just you go through the kind of mentors in your life, things you've learned from, so things you've learned from, whether it was this beat concept, got it, I learned from this, from that, of course you've learned a lot of things, but, who are some of the mentors that you would say have helped you over time, and things you've learned from them? Just one thing you've learned from each one.
Okay, I would say there would be three of them. First would be Norm Levine, who I didn't really meet till probably later in my career. And, for those of you who don't know, he actually started in New York, and then he moved to California, but he's one of the, I would say he's in the top 5 of legends of all time, as far as books written, production, all that. Norm was a no, excuse my French, BS type of guy. He was down, a real bottom line thinker. But I think the one thing, he taught me a bunch of stuff, but one of the things he taught me that I think is very true, and I would recommend it to everybody, is accountability. And accountability just can't be yourself. You got to have someone else that you're accountable to. Now, it could be a spouse. It could be a significant other. It might even be better if it's not one of those, to be perfectly frank. Someone else you respect in the industry, so that you meet with them on a quarterly or a semi-annual basis to give them up to date on how you're doing. And what that accountability does, it's another thing that triggers your RPM button, if you will, much like failure triggers it. The accountability to sit there and say, God, I'm meeting with Norm in a month, and I don't have much going on. The accountability was like an internal clock to say, get it together. My point is, without it, everything else is less effective. Without accountability, everything else is less effective. No matter what kind of program you use for sales, you must be accountable not only to yourself, but to somebody else. I really think it matters. Now, a lot of people, it is their spouse or their significant other, and that's fine, but trigger that. The other two gentlemen were gentlemen that I worked with in the agency business, Arnold Price and Stuart Raffle of the infamous Price, Raffle, and Brown organization, based in Los Angeles and New York. And I would say the two of them taught me persistency, because here they were when I was in my 40s, they were in their 70s. God bless her, but they're both still around. Arnold now, I think, is in his early 90s. And I think he's one of, if not the only living member to be the top of the table since inception. So he's a pretty good statistic right there. So here's Arnold at age 90 something, and he's still top of the table. And I mean, so right there, I think he can tell you, he can preach about persistency. But I think it's very easy as an advisor, even as a manager, to not be persistent in everything that you do. Persistence and accountability. persistence in meeting with people, persistency in knowledge. Be persistent in your life, and persistency will give you, well, it will lead to all the success you can handle. But if you take your foot off that persistency button, as Arnold used to say, then you can fall down. So there would be times when I'd come in and he'd say, "What are you doing this afternoon?" And frankly, I'd have to admit, I said that I don't have that much going on right this minute, so I'm going to go hit some balls. He goes, "Well, why don't you get something going on before you go hit some balls?" And here I am. I'm the manager of the office. He says, "Why don't you get something going first, then go hit some balls?" Hitting ball, golf balls is important, but never let that calendar get too empty. So those were probably my two greatest mentors. Peter Brown was in there too. God bless his soul, who just passed away. He was partners with Arnold and Stewart, and they were great mentors to me. And I'm very grateful for all they've done for me.
So, Tom, I'd like to ask, at what point then also in your career did you start to pivot and realize you yourself need to become a mentor and start acquiring mentees and start leading people? Because I think you've talked all about, this is all the input into you individually, but at some point you made a decision that you needed to really get into leadership. So maybe you could talk a little bit, unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Like a lot of stuff, it evolved. But as I started to have some success, I was asked to speak at some stuff, including some NAIFA events. And all of a sudden I realized that people were looking up to me, and I was kind of, flabbergasted by that. I don't know about that. But then it was a great line. And I don't know, I think it was Norm that told me, he says, great leaders don't even know how much of an influence they have.
Sure.
And it's sometimes that's true. And I'm not saying I was a great leader by any stretch of the imagination, but I started to see that I was having an influence on others, because after I would speak, I'd get phone calls to say, "Can you go on a call with me? Or what would you do on this case?" And then next thing you know, I go to a NAIFA meeting, and then I started to learn a lot about advocacy through these NAIFA meetings. First, it was just education. Then I just started to understand how the importance of NAIFA advocacy was. But I think it evolved. It was, I don't know if we'd call it a light bulb. If it was a light bulb with a dimmer switch that came on real slowly, and then all of a sudden it got bright. But then as I became a manager and started to interview people, then they'd come in and say, "Well, yeah, we've heard about you. We'd like to work with you." And I'm going, geez, I guess I've made an imprint. And there's nothing that I actually evolved to do. It happened, and I'm grateful to the man upstairs for looking over me while doing that. But it really was an evolution. But I think the line that Norm came up with is, sometimes you're a leader and you don't even know it, and so start acting like a leader more often, and you'll help others when you're not even trying. And I love doing that. I think, Suzanne, we've known each other for a few years. One of the great joys I've had of this business is being able to help others. I think that's almost as rewarding as a big sale, to see somebody else succeed, whether it was your little or large mentorship. And I think, Chris, you've had that impact on others as well. Helping others succeed is really it's as rewarding as anything I can think of.
Tom, to give you an idea, I think, the industry as a whole, it's a very lonely industry. And I think when we start off in the business, we're taught that, we're A personalities, and we're going to do this and we're going to be great at it. But we all know that even Michael Jordan couldn't win without teammates, regardless of how good he was. And so the idea that, the rising tide lifts all boats. And I think, if you want to be a great one, you have to think like one. And how else do you do it without A, rubbing shoulders with them, and B, learning from them? So I know that NAIFA is a incubator for that, through a lot of the programming. Let's talk about leadership for you? I mean, you served as the president during a let's call it a challenging time during COVID, right? You led the association, you led NAIFA. What would you share about that time? What was the most difficult thing about doing it during a pandemic, which is completely different than us getting together multiple times a year and having board meetings and all that fun things? So you had to do things a little bit different. So if you could take a step back and look back in history, I mean, what would you say that you learned about yourself in learning how, and also what did you learn about the association during that period of time that helped you push through and excel?
Really good question. I guess the first thing I would say is the beauty of the pandemic, for lack of a better term, because I guess it wasn't the beauty, but there was no track record to run on. I think the last time we had one was 1910 or whatever. So none of us, or 20, so none of us had a track record on what to do. And we didn't know the extent of what we were in the midst of. But we also knew that, again, I'm a big believer in crisis. For every crisis, another door opens, and opportunity also opens up doors. And we felt that as soon as we got together, we said, okay, we've got to shift some stuff. And we don't know if we're going to have the event in the fall, but we know what we can do today. And what we can do today is be a resource for our constituents. And, someone like Suzanne was a great help. And I don't know if I could even spell Zoom before the pandemic. But boy, you sure got a wheel of it real fast. But I don't know if you remember, we started putting on together monthly meetings, informational meetings, positioning people, talking about the pandemic, how to thrive in this. And there was a lot of topics that came up in that process that were relevant, such as how to do applications, e-apps, instead of having to meet with people. There are people who've been in the business 25 years like myself. I'd never done an e-app. Get your pen and sign on the bottom line. That's all I ever knew. So we tried to first adapt to what was in front of us. Then the second one is, like I think any good management group would do, is, all right, now let's try to look 3 months down the road, and let's look 6 months down the road, and where are we going to be? And to be perfectly frank, the 6 months was really difficult because we didn't know what was in store for us. Again, we didn't have a track record, but we surely could plan for 3 months and get in front of people as much as we could. And it was fascinating. I mean, I don't remember Suzanne, but I think we had close to 1,000 people on some of those early webinars
the town halls.
Town halls.
Looking back, I think people even, everything shut down on March 13th. On March 14th was a Saturday. We had an executive committee emergency meeting where we hatched out a plan, and we started the following Monday having our first town hall. First town hall was Zoom. We had tons of members, never been on Zoom, didn't know how to use a webinar. We had like 160 people day one. Day two was 300. Day three was like 500. We just did them every day to be that fast response. It was incredible. By the end of the week, we had over 1,000 people. People had come out of the woodwork. They saw NAIFA in a new light, right? It was the first time, I think, for me, where the geographic boundaries were completely dropped, right? And people said, this is one NAIFA. And on top of it, we're trying to go through a change of an organizational structure. And it allowed us to kind of drop the geographic, zip code wars, whatever you want to call it, where do you local, et cetera, and say, look, we're at the end of the day, we're all Americans here. This is our community. And I think that's really where NAIFA Nation was born, right? The family aspect of NAIFA, belonging to an association with that type of quick response time. No one else was doing what we were doing. And then the piece I would say from Tom's leadership at that time was, we used a lot of football analogies. But it was like, everything was like, we're inside the 2-minute warning here. It's the fourth quarter. We got to move the ball forward. Like there is no other plan other than forward, right? That's it. Right. We'll only have forward. And so we just took that mentality and we just said, let's just keep trying stuff. And they were, as a management team, a lot of other groups are super risk averse. They pulled back. They said, we're not going to have any meetings for the next 2 years. And instead, we kept on with our annual meeting. We kept on with congressional conference. We just kept on, being active. So maybe that came from the beak, and I didn't know that until today, Tom.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it was. But I mean, the other thing, Chris, is we have an annual conference now called Peak. At that time, it was called Performance Plus Purpose. And I remember somebody saying, "Well, I guess it's off." And we said, "No, it's not off. It's going to be different." Right. And I think I always tell people this. If you think about it, there's a lot of points out of this that you can use towards your practice, because not every day are you going to wake up and the schedule is going to go as you plan. And not, need I tell you, if you got 6 meetings scheduled in a day, chances are good 2 of them probably aren't going to show up, and you got to pivot. You got to learn how to pivot. And I think in this industry, we learn how to pivot pretty darn well. But anyway, that conference we had was unbelievably well attended. Our sponsors showed up in droves because they were saying, heck yes, we want to be in front of people and let them know that we're still here. There was a lot of, as much as people that know me, I'm a hugger and I like to be in front of people and shaking hands and high-fiving and all the other good stuff that goes with being belly-to-belly relationships. There was a lot of good that came out of that. Unfortunately, I'm obviously very sympathetic to the millions of families and individuals that were affected by that. But I think I think 10, 15 years from now, and I know this isn't a history lesson, there'll be so many things in business and in the world that will be pre-pandemic and post-pandemic because of the way the whole world pivoted. And I'm proud of the way NAIFA pivoted.
Tom, as an advisor who and one of the past presidents of a local chapter, I'll give you some thoughts that I know from an advisor perspective. I think that most advisors were able to use was one is that NAIFA was consistent and persistent. I noticed that my emails got more during that, and a lot of companies pull back and says, we're just going to wait to see what happens. And they stopped planning meetings. They stopped getting together. And people said, we're going to focus on ourselves and our family. We're going to do those things. I know that NAIFA did one thing for us in our organization is it continued, and you continue to inspire us to do the work, to lean into this when things were difficult. And it goes back to my background in sports is when you're down 10, you don't just fold and go home, right? You say, you know what, you look at each other and you say, okay, what are we going to do? And now I need to be able to count on you to do your part. And so I think it brought people together. And then I think that you guys inspired and gave people direction. And I think that will forever be parts of the pieces that advisors took out of the pandemic and your leadership during that period of time. So you've transitioned, you passed the gavel, and now you've transitioned. So past president, what is that role? What do you do? What do you do? Do you just, you call on the bat phone to the president and say, hey, here's what I think? Or, as past president, what is your responsibility now? And what do you do now in that role?
Well, I belong to this rocking chair group. We meet every Thursday. And I didn't get a white horse and ride off into the sunset or any of that other stuff. Actually, I think it's it is a great job because you don't have a specific duty unless the president, in this case, it's Larry Holtzberg, who's a good friend of mine, asks you to do some stuff. And Larry's kept my plate very, very full. Damn him. No. Anyways, he's kept me very busy. One of the aspects that I'm really focused on now, and then even after I step off the leadership team, is helping our corporate development. We have 20,000 members. They're phenomenal, but to do all the stuff we need to do, we need to march in line with our corporate partners, who I always tell people when we advocate, it's a multi-legged stool when we advocate. I mean, we are advocating for the advisor. Of course we are. But at the end of the day, we're advocating for the client, because if some of our products are not allowed to be taken to market, that can affect their planning drastically. And last but not least, we're advocating for the carriers who produce the products that we implement in our strategies. So they need us. And I think they it's not that they never realized it, but there's more and more that understand that we're a far spread, have much greater breadth and depth than we used to as far as an advocacy organization, as was exemplified by our proactive efforts in the Department of Labor appeal down in Texas. And I can tell you, I was meeting with somebody from Raymond James, who most of you know is a very big investment company. And they go, "Oh yeah, NAIFA, you're the insurance lobbyist group." Well, yes, but no, we do so much more than that. So that's one area that I'm helping with, Chris. And then, of course, as for those of you on this that know about NAIFA, we've had two business plans put in the last 8 years, I guess it is. First was our NAIFA 2020, which is our strategic plan, and I was part of that plan and then helped implement it. And then I was part of the development team of NAIFA 2025, and I want to see us through on that as well. So, like any good salesman, I want to see it through to the end. I'm very excited about this association, not only this industry, but this association and what it brings to the table. And so I'm pretty busy doing a lot of stuff for NAIFA, and I'm not proud and not shy to admit it.
We're happy that you're at the forefront of that. Tom, let's spend before we get into our last few questions, all right, our lightning round, which is kind of fun. And I know we didn't prepare you for it, but it's necessary. So talk to me a little bit about every year we go to the Hill collectively as a group and to communicate with legislators the impact of the laws in which they're either creating or opportunities or bills. Talk to me a little bit about your experience, right? Because you've met with lots of legislators, and then kind of the misnomer that because they make a bill or they make a law, they understand the impact of what it has, not only in the marketplace to us, but what it means to our clients. Can you talk a little bit about your experience by going into the Senate and the House and kind of, you know, what you've learned as you've done this?
It's been one of the great rewards of my career, Chris, is to become involved in advocacy, because I think there's a misconception, and I tell my friends this at dinner parties when I come home from being in D.C. or in my case, state capital of Sacramento. It's really easy to pick on Congress. I think we probably all do it once or twice a day, whether it's like, but in their defense, they have so much in front of them. It's mind-boggling. It's overwhelming. And yes, they have staffs of anywhere from 3 to 7 people that are to keep them on top of all the pertinent issues. But it's mind-boggling if you think about all the bills that are going through there. I think people would be blown away the amount of stuff that Congress deals with on a daily basis, and it's probably a flaw in the system, frankly, and maybe why we don't get stuff done. But they need to know. It's really important that everyone knows. They need to know who we are, and what we do, and how we help individuals. We like to say we focus on Main Street. We help people every day put in a plan so that their dreams can be realized. And if there's something that prematurely happens, we want to make sure that the family's dreams are realized. And I think, I know that the general Congress person thinks of us as these rich salespeople that go around making millions of dollars on people, and they don't understand the long-term effects of what we do. That's why it's something like Life Happens, an organization that we are very fond of, that tells real life stories about what we do, whether it be life insurance or disability. That's why it's so powerful. And, I just had a couple meetings in in the last month. And one of the issues right now is this Retirement Act that we have, the Secure Act that's up there. And here's the funny thing. So I think it went through the House with maybe four votes against. I mean, basically a landslide, if you will, but it's stumbling at the Senate. Now, come on, what could possibly be holding him up? Well, it's the little stuff, and so wants his stuff and that stuff, and I get it. But you'd be surprised that why it was important that we raise the required minimum distribution and why people need access to their funds in case of emergency. And they don't, they get up there on the Hill, and this is not a knock on them because, as I said, they've got a lot going on, but they get behind the gates and they don't see real life. And when we go to the Hill and when we go to our state capitals, we are there to show them what real life is all about. I think Chris, I've told you the story that I've worked with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who's very well known. She's here in the Southern California area. And Maxine and I probably don't agree on a lot of policies, but we have a very cordial relationship. And one time I was down there and she was not real thrilled. Again, she kind of had that misnomer that, we're just out selling product. And she wanted to know how much her community had benefited from our products. I didn't know where I was going to get this information, but I said I would get it. Anyways, I made a number of phone calls and we found one carrier that actually could identify by zip code the amount of benefits paid. So I got all the zip codes in her district, sent it to the carrier. The carrier came back, and it happened to be the benefits were close to $1 billion. Well, Mrs. Waters has had a whole different look on what we do based on that conversation. I could go on for others, but it's really important to illustrate to everybody how important what we do and how we do it is. And I think then you're going to get more positive legislation if they have a better feel for what you do. And that's why I'm so adamant about it, that I continue to do it, and I'll probably do it to the day the man upstairs wants me to go advocate for something, hopefully in heaven.
Suzanne, with that being said, I think Tom, you've done a great job. I think thank you for being here on Advisor Podcast, NAIFA's podcast. We're super excited. This is our inaugural season. Hopefully, we get renewed. Yay! Next year. I think it's purposeful, it's powerful. Thank you for your leadership. Suzanne, do you have anything else before we get into the lightning rod?
Chris, I think it's time. I think it's time to put Tom to the test.
I was about to thank both of you, but maybe I better wait till after the lightning round.
So, Tom, here's the rules of the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some questions. Say pass. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Whatever top of mind, that's how you answer. Okay. So, Tom, by the way, everyone, Tom does not have these questions. So we're going to ask you some questions. And again, just be yourself, right? All right. You ready? Tom, I heard you mention today that you were a bartender. What was your favorite drink that you now make for yourself?
It would probably be vodka on the rocks because of its simplicity. Every time I heard daiquiri or something like that, I ran for the hills. That's why you never want the morning shift. They're always those foo-foo drinks.
Tom, you're known as the bear. Why?
Oh, there's been a couple instances over the last couple of years where other organizations tried to challenge us, and it would have been really easy to back down. Or there were some instances where it would have been easier to back down, and I said, the bear doesn't back down. Bear doesn't back down from anything. We're going to stand up and be strong. And I think it's a good policy to have in your life anyways. If people can know they can walk all over you, they're going to walk all over you.
Yeah, you got enough. You're going to challenge a former football player, right? Football player once, football player for life. That's right.
Yeah.
Tom, speaking of football, favorite football team?
I'm a Rams fan. I'm born and raised a Rams fan. Actually, there's a picture of my dad. My dad was, when he was in his late 30s, a water boy for the Rams. So anyways, yeah, I've always been a Rams fan because I'm from Southern California.
All right, Tom.
And we won a Super Bowl. What do you know?
Your favorites, your all-time favorite sports figure.
You know what? I never met him. He played before my time, but I'd say Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson. Wow. All right, Tom. And last question. If you could give the president of NAIFA 100 years from today advice, and you were able to leave it, buried in a treasure trove and bury it for 100 years, and we pulled it out in 100 years, what advice would you give the sitting president 100 years from today?
Well, it's going to be the advice I give almost every meeting is we've come too far to just come this far. This industry and what we do for people every day has to be a core thread of our society, especially as we are getting older. And I can't imagine how long the people are going to be living 100 years from now. The products and the strategies that we sell are critical to happiness, to success, to family, to friendship. There's just so much more to them. So to those people 100 years from now, make sure that NAIFA is as viable today as it was back in 1890 when we were founded, and in 1911 when the Wilson administration made some concessions in the tax code to us, because we've come too far to just come this far.
Awesome. Suzanne, do you have anything before we wrap up?
Just to say thank you, Tom. Thank you for your leadership. It's always great. We still have a lot more to do.
Tom, do you have any more words for us before I close?
It's not your attitude. It's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude in life. That's another one of my favorites. And it's so true. You're going to have bad days. Get over it. Things just aren't always going to be rosy. But if you keep a good attitude, your altitude will be taken care of.
Awesome. So as Tom continues to fly high in the past president's seat, his altitude, he's an inspiring leader. As we come together, thanks everyone for tuning in today. I'm your co-host, Chris Gandy, and our wonderful guest, Tom Michel. Thank you for being here. Our wonderful co-host, Suzanne Carawan, where we come together to uplift, empower, and educate each other for the betterment of our industry and our advocacy going forward. Thank you for being a part of our day today, and thank you for listening to Advisor Today.
Thanks for joining us for NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series. Make sure to subscribe to get future episodes. And if you're interested in coming on the show, let us know.